joining us each Wednesday. Two of our most celebrated guests, and we welcome back the government's Chief Whip, Joel Fitzgibbon. Welcome back. And the Liberals MP in Kooyong in Melbourne, Joshua Frydenberg. Welcome back to Breaking Politics.
Thanks, Tim. Hi, Joel.
A must-start question for you. We have this morning, Joel, Financial Review saying there's only 5 votes in it for Kevin Rudd. He's almost there. Michelle Grattan suggested it might be 7 to 11 in the middle. The ABC, I think, had 6 that were saying they were going to vote both ways. Lots of counting going on somewhere. And as we always say, you'd know about it. So what's happening?
Tim, can I first of all ask you to provide evidence that Josh and I are most celebrated? Is there some? Can you authenticate that? Well, I'd be very pleased if you can.
As the government's Chief Whip, you're particularly celebrated today, Joel. All this evidence of counting. There's got to be something happening in caucus on this front, hasn't there?
Well, Tim, I'm often criticised for calling a spade too often, being too honest in politics, but, I wear that as a badge of honour. And the newspapers are full of it, and the punters will conclude that something must be going on. But, about a year ago I caused unwarranted fanfare because I stated on national television that unpopular leaders can't lead forever. Well, I thought it was a statement of fact. I immediately also said that I thought Julia Gillard would recover. So I've learned not to, be too honest, because unfortunately these things get misinterpreted. But it'd be silly to tell people watching your program that there's nothing going on. Obviously, internally, people are looking at the polls and they're expressing concern about the future of the government and indeed the party, and you'll get conversations, and those conversations, unfortunately, are making their way into the media. But these are internal matters, and I think we should keep them internal.
Conversations counting?
No counting, Tim.
No.
People are just speculating. We're 6 months out from an election. Obviously, we're struggling in the opinion polls. It's causing unrest in the party room, particularly amongst MPs that are on relatively narrow margins about their future in this place.
Okay, you're being blunt with us. Be blunt with us about whether there is any chance that caucus might have to call some sort of extraordinary meeting before this week is out. Any chance?
I don't think there's any chance of that. The Prime Minister continues to enjoy the support of the party room, and I think people prove themselves a little bit overexcited by speculating that there'll be a change this week, or indeed, necessarily before the next election.
Okay, but you do concede that at least there are discussions going on. You're open enough to tell us that there is talk going on. What mechanism can that lead to where caucus can resolve this, can get this steam out of their system?
Well, again, I do your ratings no good when it's on the front page of every newspaper to say that no one's talking about the future of the government. Of course they are, but we've got the media bills before the Parliament at the moment. We're determined to secure the passage of those bills, and if we do, of course, that will be a great boost to the government. You
know that much of this speculation is driven by the fact that Parliament's due to rise at the end of business tomorrow and not come back for 2 months until the federal budget. So everybody's saying, Joel Fitzgibbon, you want to resolve this, you do it now.
There are a lot of people around pretty pleased about that, Tim. But we're focused on these media bills at the moment and our broader, very progressive agenda, and I think we've just got to focus on that and get on with the job.
I don't want to labour this point, but it is an important one to all of our viewers, no doubt. Is there any mechanism by which you could examine the leadership post this sitting of Parliament through this break, or does it necessarily all just go away if you don't do it in the next 2 days?
Well, I've been asked this question before. I think this idea that the party could change leaders between budget day and the September election is just a silly concept. I think the answer to that is no.
They couldn't change. Once we get to budget day, we're locked in. So it has to be before.
Well, you're working on the hypothetical that it's going to happen, Tim, and I haven't said that it is going to happen.
It might. I think I'm working on your previous statement to say that it might, and I'm wondering how it could beyond the next 2 days, or couldn't it?
I've seen nothing this week that would suggest to me that there's going to be a leadership change.
Okay. Despite all the chatter you're seeing.
Well, I'm just making the point. People aren't silly. There must be chatter going on around the place, otherwise we wouldn't have our internals splashed across the front page of every newspaper. But I haven't seen any evidence that the party's likely to change leader.
Okay, we'll take you on your form there. Joshua Frydenberg being very patient in the wings there because leadership at the moment is not in question in the Liberal and National Party coalition, so we'll come to you in a sec, but I do want to pick you up on one point of media reform.
Sorry, Josh, I'll just be one more minute.
Yes,
you probably have a view on leadership too, I suspect.
We'll give you a chance, but you expressed your views on media reform apparently in caucus yesterday. Be blunt with us. What did you tell caucus about your view of the way media reform has been handled in the last week or two by Labor?
Well, I made two key points. One is that we are confusing the issue by simultaneously talking about things like diversity and the 75% reach rule and all those complex issues that go with those areas of media regulation, with the very, what I think is the even more important issue, and that is addressing or providing protection to ordinary Australians from the excesses of the media. And therefore, our narrative, we haven't really laid the groundwork for a narrative at all, and if you like, we've embraced the wrong narrative. We're having a fight with the media organisations about what I could describe as a fairly broad, vague concept for most Australians, diversity and all those complex issues, when we should be talking about our determination to protect ordinary Australians from, as I said, the excesses of the media. That's the narrative. We're out there stopping people being wronged by what I would describe as reckless journalism. And, families suffer a lot of pain as a result of this, what I would describe as misinformation and overreach in some of the reporting we see in our newspapers.
Joshua Frydenberg, how much has the discussion about the media reforms gone off the rails?
Completely off the rails, and Joel's set the cat among the pigeons earlier this week by saying that it's been a flawed process, and now has confirmed that they have the wrong narrative. In fact, we don't believe that we needed any of these so-called media reforms because they're going to impinge on free speech, and you'd have to go back to 1695 to see a English-speaking government back in William III in England who imposed these sort of restrictions on media content, particularly in newspapers. So we've got great diversity in the media, and I think the Labor Party has gone down the wrong route on this one.
Who should have done this better inside Labor, Charles Fitzgibbon? Is this Stephen Conroy? Is it Julia Gillard? Did she need to lead this process sooner?
Well, I think the government's always open to compromise, particularly in a hung parliament, because in a sense it doesn't have any choice. We do not have the numbers in either house to ram through legislation. Finkelstein, for example, recommended a public regulator, publicly run, publicly funded. The media barons screamed blue murder over that, and we found a compromise in the form of the Advocate. So, and compromise always is messy, and we're still compromising this morning, and it looks messy.
Okay.
But it's a bad compromise. The point is, it's just going down the wrong path with these changes.
Can I make another point, Tim? The diversity issue is a very important one in that it was always going to invoke a certain response from the media outlets, because diversity goes very much to economic questions, the market, how the market sees media organisation. So whenever it comes to money, you can be sure you'll get a fight.
This is damaging for Julia Gillard. The media reforms and the problems with them are tied in with the leadership we were just discussing, aren't they, Joel Fitzgibbon?
Well, it was written that I was having a crack at the Prime Minister in the caucus. Not true. What I was saying is, please, get the narrative right. Start talking about it. Look, everyone, I believe everyone, Tim, knows someone who has at some time found themselves, I'll say, a victim of what I would describe as reckless media reporting, whether it be, the footballer they know, or the footballer's wife, the family that for some reason has had a kid go through the court system, whatever it might be. And if we talked about our determination to protect people from those sorts of excesses, I think we'd be doing much better.
Julia Gillard has come into these negotiations full on, though.
But she should have been there. But Tim, she should have been there from the start. These media reforms or bills are a metaphor for the incompetence of the Labor Party. And, you know, Joel's just confirmed there are conversations going on as we speak about her leadership. This week, Mark Butler, a leader in the South Australian Labor left, has come out and said that he no longer supports the Prime Minister. Bob Carr, despite his denial sitting next to John Kerry in Washington, has said he still supports the Prime Minister, but then he's out there briefing journalists that he doesn't. So, you know, clearly, you know, the wheels are coming off, and they're going to come off before the end of the week, I think.
Tim, the 43rd Parliament. It is a hung Parliament. Josh has never seen a hung Parliament through the eyes of a parliamentary whip. Can I tell you, it's difficult and it's ugly. It always looks messy by definition.
And that's what we're watching now, the mess that you get from a hung Parliament.
Absolutely.
Oh, we're getting much more than that. I mean, don't forget, it's a cabinet that has to approve these media bills. It's a cabinet that's picked the fight with, you know, media proprietors around the country and has united everyone from the ABC to Fairfax to News Limited.
Josh, can I ask you a question? If the Chief Justice of the High Court retired tomorrow and we appointed him as the advocate, would you still suggest that he would be taking his marching orders from the government and would be a spokesperson for the government? Would you say that?
But that's not the point, because the
It
point
is the
is about the
point.
community standards that
What?
the public media advocate is supposed to define and to rule
No,
on,
Tim,
is
he-
not the role.
he's-
It
he's
does,
going to
it
say
does
that
go to
regular.
the issue of objectivity, though, and whether...
the now retired Chief Justice of the High Court is going to say to Fairfax, you show us your code of conduct, your stand, what you believe are community standards, and how you intend to enforce them. And I tell you whether I reckon
And then you're going to
they're
revoke
reasonable.
someone's,
No.
some journalist's, ability to be protected
No, we're
by the
not.
privacy.
Because once the advocate ticks off on the regime, you've got the privacy coverage.
Before,
So you now
what's the
support
problem?
before
them?
we get into too much
I do
detail,
support
before we
the
get into
advocate.
the minutiae of the media changes, Josh makes the point about Bob Carr appearing publicly to say one thing very
I thought we
firmly.
got off leadership.
Well, we're back there.
That's
Funny
right.
that, eh? You did.
You're setting it off, Joel. Thanks very much.
Bob Carr made his statement so publicly and blatantly, and journalists, frankly, perhaps we're biased, but we put a deal of trust in the journalists who did that story, were completely bemused. Do you completely accept Bob Carr and Mark Butler's statement saying, we're still with Gillard?
STD phone calls are still very expensive, Tim. I haven't spoken with him.
Right.
But the thing about Bob
Do
Carr...
people understand what STD means?
Yes, yeah, I do. And the thing about Bob Carr is he said he never supported Eddie Obeid and he always supported Julia Gillard. I think he's got his lines crossed there, Tim, because, you know, he is no longer supporting the Prime Minister. He ambushed her over the Palestinian vote at the United Nations, and he actually sees himself as an alternative leader.
Let me let me close out on media.
I'm learning so much this morning.
You are. You are. Let me close out. Has Julia Gillard, in your eyes, performed well in her carriage of these media reforms, or poorly?
Well, I can only make the same point.
Yes or no, Joel? Yes or no?
Julia Gillard has done the best you could possibly expect of her in the environment which is the hung parliament.
She has turned this around to an extent, hasn't she? I mean, 2 bills went through last night of the
That's right.
6.
2 already through, and we'll have another crack tonight for a couple more. And, you know, maybe people like Josh will come to their senses and conclude that this is good public policy.
And you're quite convinced we won't be seeing a caucus meeting on leadership between now and the end of this?
I'm quite convinced.
And as Stephen Conroy
But if
said...
I read something different in Fairfax, I will take that.
You'll let me know?
Well, if I read it in Fairfax, I suspect you'll already know.
Oh, right. Joel Fitzgibbon, Joshua Frydenberg, wonderful talking to you on a hectic political day.
Thanks,
Good to
Tim.
see
Thanks,
you guys
Joel.
in here.
Thanks, Josh.